Good morning. Welcome into the show. It is Daniel Werman coming to you live from the Dream Sports Studios. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This is your 6 a.m. West Coast wake-up call and all time zones in between. Thank you for tuning in this Thursday morning, June the 20th. Coming up in just a few minutes, we will have Dawn Crow, and we are excited to have her joining us. She is the head coach of UW-Stevens Point, and looking forward to that conversation. Also today we have the U.S. women's national team taking on Sweden. So going to be tracking that match, getting ready for that action. If the U.S. wins or draws, they win the group. If Sweden wins, they win Group F. So there still is something to play for. We will see how that goes. Sweden really has nothing to lose here, and I expect that they attempt to bring the game to the U.S. I don't anticipate Sweden wanting to settle for a draw, and it will be interesting to see how the U.S. handles that and plays with that. In terms of the Netherlands and Canada, they are even on goal difference. They are tied on points atop Group E. And so goals scored, I believe, is the next tiebreaker that has the Netherlands ahead of Canada. I think that's another situation where Canada, like Sweden, are going to try to get something out of this match. And it will be interesting to see how the Netherlands handle that. That match when that Group E is being decided 1 and 2. In both Group E and F, Cameroon, New Zealand, Chile, Thailand, all on 0 points. So those teams will be seeing what they can get done on the field in terms of scoring some goals and getting some points. And trying to advance. The difference between Group E and Group F is that in Group F, you have the U.S. women's national team facing off against Sweden. In Group E, they are not playing each other. So, kind of looking at what is coming in terms of those two groups today. It will be interesting to follow and to see what is the mentality of Sweden. What is their goal in terms of, are they just going to kind of see this out and be happy with second place, or are they going to go for it? In the case of Group E, when you have, and the Group E matches are at noon Eastern, the Group F matches are at 3 Eastern. When the Netherlands play, they are, Netherlands are playing Canada today atop of Group E. So I had that mixed up. So, yes, so at noon Eastern, the Netherlands and Canada, which is 1 and 2 in Group E, are facing off. So it'll be interesting to see if Canada and Sweden take the same mindset and try to go for the win, or are they happy with what they see? Only time will tell on that side of things. Yesterday we saw some drama in the match between Argentina and Scotland, and this was in Group D. Scotland were up 3-0. 3-0 past the 70th minute and go on to draw 3-3. They give up a penalty. They're up 3-2. They give up a penalty. I don't think there could be any argument over the penalty itself. However, in the moments leading up to that exchange of play, the referee botched a Scotland substitution. They were playing with only 10 on the field, and the substitute was trying to get on the field, and So in that regard, that passage of play that led, immediately to the penalty was on the referee. A botched handling of that moment, which put Scotland in a bind. Player fouls, penalties called. It was a clear penalty, but Scotland scrambling with 10 trying to cover things, and people were out of position because the player wasn't allowed to get on in time, etc. So Scotland gives up the penalty. The keeper saves the penalty, and we get another VAR review, and it's ruled that the keeper left her line too early, and therefore it was retaken. Argentina scores 3-3, and that knocked Scotland out of the World Cup. They were going to be on 4 points, in second place in the group, tied on points with Japan, and second in the group to last in the group with only 1 point, with 3 matches played, with a -2 goal difference, and out of the World Cup. So the Scottish ladies, I'm sure, are devastated and frustrated with themselves, frustrated with the referee. It was when they look back on this World Cup, there's going to be some lessons, I think, that they're going to look to learn and overcome heading into future World Cups and future play, because there were definitely some things I think they could correct in terms of tactics, the way they were set up to play by the coach, some substitutions, and then obviously when you're 3-0 and you can't see it out, that's a problem. So, a lot of drama yesterday in that match. Last night, Copa America, Argentina, Paraguay. Man, if you're not watching Copa America, number one, find it on ESPN Plus. You can get every match in English or Portuguese. I'm not sure where the Spanish broadcast is being covered, but I know that on ESPN Plus you can get English and Portuguese. When you watch Argentina, Paraguay, good Lord, that is a shell of a team. It looks like a Sunday League team thrown out there with Messi. There's no structure. There's no system. Guys are just running around. The thing that makes Messi so good is you basically let him play as like a joker. You let him, you give him, assignments of certain things, but then you also allow him to find the game, and that's one of the things that he's kind of genius level about. He can drop into spaces. He'll look for the areas on the field where he can exploit the opponent, etc. And you give him that freedom. You give him that freedom to move around. And in Barcelona, one of the things that they did, especially under Pep Guardiola and with Tito Villanova as well, and to a lesser extent with Luis Enrique, Tata Martino, not quite as much, because they're not necessarily positional play managers in the way that Pep and Tito were. But even still, what they would do is they would say, okay, Messi, you rotate in here, you play in this space, and give him freedom to kind of move around in that area. And then they would rotate their other players on the field to cover other areas. So a classic rotation at Barcelona under Pep Guardiola is if Messi was out wide as a right wing forward, as a number 7, and he would tuck in into kind of that number 10 attacking space, then the right back would move up and kind of occupy either the center back or the right back, and the midfielder would kind of drop and cover the space left by the right back. And so you had this kind of triangle rotation. Well, when you look at Argentina, it's as if every player on the field has been given complete license and freedom to just run anywhere. I mean, it really looks like a coach going, okay, here's how we're going to play. And he goes to the ground, looks at his team and puts, 4 cones in a row in the back, 3 cones in the middle, triangle, and then put 3 cones in a line up top and say, okay, we're going to play 4-3-3. All right, now go get them. And think that they actually just told their team how to play. When you put 4 cones on the ground in a row, put a triangle of 3 cones and then 3 cones above that and say, okay, we're going to play 4-3-3, now go play. You didn't tell your team how to play. You told your team where to line up at a kickoff. Any of those rotations been defined? Any of the positioning been defined? Any pattern play along the top been defined? No. So you didn't tell your team how to play. You really put them at a disadvantage. And it is embarrassing to watch Argentina be this bad. And when I say they're this bad, if you're not watching, it is unbelievable. And it has nothing to do, zero, zip, nada, nothing to do with Messi. Any person that's casting blame on Messi for this is shouldn't be listened to in terms of analysis. This has all to do with player selection and the coaching, and it is abysmal. I'm not saying that Argentina right now is loaded with amazing players top to bottom, but what we're seeing, it's embarrassing for the country. I don't see how this coach lasts much longer. It's just not good. So they are on 1 point after 2 games in the group stage of Copa America and are on life support to see whether they can even get out of the group, which would be a complete and utter shock and disappointment for everyone. But anyone who's been paying attention to this Argentine national team over the last couple of years can tell you that it's not been trending in the right direction, and they need a major overhaul and redo of what they're doing there in Argentina. So today's sponsor this half hour is Dutkick Brand. You can learn more about Dutkick Brand at dutkigbrand.com. Again, that is dutkigbrand.com. There you can get your session planners, your goalkeeping notebooks, waterproof paper. It's unbelievable products that they have. If you don't know about them, check them out at dutkickbrand.com. Use promo code DWSHOW to get 10% off your order. DWSHOW to get 10% off your order at dutkickbrand.com. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the show. We have Dawn Crow joining us. She is the head coach of UW Stevens Point. Don, welcome to the show, and how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm trying to get back on normal time here for the most part. I haven't caught up with my plane for travel.
So, were you able to go over and take in some of the World Cup in France?
Yeah, we actually we took our college team over there we're over there June 6th through the 17th, and so we got to see 5 games, and then we got to play 2, and then just obviously sightseeing. We started in Italy and then came into Nice and did kind of the roundabout, and then finished with the U.S.-Chile game in Paris. So it was a great opportunity for the girls, and nice to kind of catch up with some people I hadn't seen in a while. So it was kind of fun.
So when you take your team over to Europe and play, what are you seeing in terms of level of competition over there versus your college players?
It's really interesting. So obviously the Harvard Sports Group is who we did our tour through. And our guide was amazing, Flavio. And so he set up games for us. We played a team literally almost like the next night after we got in. So we were a little jet lagged, and it definitely showed. But, there's still the physical, and it's kind of like when you watch our national team play, there's still we are still physically dominating over them, in terms of speed, in terms of aggression, in terms of, but where I think even our college girls kind of struggle sometimes is they're reactionary rather than kind of reading what the game is really kind of giving you. So they're thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead compared to our girls who are like maybe 1 step. So like the game of soccer, they may play a little bit better, but like putting it all together, I think, where we can get the physicality of actually playing and kind of that side of it, I think is, it's been a strength of the U.S. women forever. People are starting to catch up in terms of the athleticism and now can play a little bit better, but, you see it out on the youth level a lot there, with the teams that we played at least.
Speaking of, other countries starting to catch up, what are you seeing in terms of from countries like England, Netherlands, Spain, Italy, France, in terms of their ability now to give the U.S. women's national team a game, to compete with them? What are you seeing in terms of their development in those countries that's allowing them to be more competitive on a global stage? You there?
Yes. Sorry, I don't know what that was.
I have no idea. So basically, we were asking, what are you seeing from Italy, France, Spain, England that's allowing them their development, that is allowing them to compete with the U.S. women's national team, on a global stage?
Oh, even like if you take Italy, like Italy has mandated that every single Italian first division club have a women's program, and they fund it. So you're starting to see that take over in terms of their development. I mean, I think everybody would easily say they're kind of that surprise at the World Cup. So you have people putting more resources into it. I thought it was actually kind of interesting. We watched the Dutch play. We watched them play Cameroon. We watched the England-Scotland game, which my heart goes out to Scotland. I think if they would have used VAR the way they use it now for the women's game in the men's World Cup, you'd have people freaking going ballistic on all that, taking PKs and making them redo them. I'm like going, what the heck? What about the encroachment on the other side of it? You can't just pick what you want to focus on. but I think that's opening up a whole new can of worms. But then like the Spanish team, gosh, if they could find like a legit goal scorer, like I mean, they're great box to box. It's like, okay, now what? Type of a deal. So I think, the women's game has gotten so much better on an international scale, that, the type of resources that are getting pumped in everywhere else but in America for that. I think I personally think we're going to start losing out players to go overseas because the money they can make over there is going to be better than they can make here. So, I think soccer overall is just, I'm excited for it. I would have loved to do it back in the day when I was still playing, but like the thought of what's to come and leaving it better for the younger generation, I mean, like it gets me giddy.
It's definitely encouraging to see the resources and attention and priority focus being placed on the women's game now. And in the end, even though it's going to make it tougher for the U.S. to compete on a global stage, I think that competition is good, and if we learn from it and inspires or motivates the U.S. to do more to get better, then I think we can turn it into a positive for sure.
I totally agree on that side. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, to me, the typical sports fan in America, I mean, no offense to anybody, but, we're fair weather fans and we do a great job of supporting winners, and that's about it. It's like, you look overseas and you see teams play, like, you support your team. Everybody has one team. It's not like, you get laughed at if you supported millions of different teams. And, well, I like this team here, I like this team here. Like, that's kind of a joke overseas. So to me, that's just, well, why would I want to watch soccer when I can go watch this, or when I can go watch this, or, that type of a deal here in the States. But now if, it's always funny because as soon as the World Cup on the women's side comes, now all of a sudden all these people want to be part of it, and want to be, there for when something truly exciting happens. But, like, I mean, Anson did a great job for us when we were in college, really getting and hammering home the fact that it's your job to continue the game, will the game continue in a certain way? And so, you may not be the most, wealthy, well-off player, but it's also your job to go and buy season tickets for, a team close to you, and you may not use them, but you have people who could use them, and support the league to keep it going. And so, that was, I mean, he definitely nailed that home consistently with all the youth clinics we did and all the other community service stuff we did, because it's an important part of selling the whole thing of soccer. And I think that, if we can figure out how to do it, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
So when we look at the developments, let's look in Italy for a second. With the development in Italy, the women's teams now being placed as a priority by the Italian Federation, and you have these these teams being funded and operated throughout Italy, and we look at the U.S. struggling with 9 teams. We have the gold standard of a women's national team, but we only have 9 teams in our professional league. And now you're seeing countries like Italy. So it's not just amount of a player can get paid, but the fact that there's even more playing opportunities or more slots because there's more clubs with women's teams. So I mean, money could be the same, money could be even less in Italy, but when you only have 9 teams, there's only so many places to go around.
And just the discrepancy within those teams is just amazing. I mean, look at Sky Blue again. I mean, they traded the girl from South Carolina to the Chicago Red Stars. Great, you get 2 more draft picks, but your 2 draft picks this year decided not to play with you. So you look at standard of care that those athletes are like, I mean, even Jess McDonald said, I thought about quitting because it's hard to raise a kid on that salary that they're getting. But I find it interesting in how things are funded as well. And obviously, it's just touching the surface, but part of the lawsuit that the women are having is it's the opportunity. It's not just about money. It's can you fund our league like you funded the MLS for so long? I mean, they only starting getting in the black, correct? In terms of the actual league making money,
Right.
And it was backed by U.S. Soccer. Well, everything that the women have tried, yes, the salary for the women have been backed if they're on a national team, but not anything else in terms of that, where they did more for the men's side. So, it's that opportunity for doing stuff. Think about if they would have pumped in those resources when they first asked for it, as opposed to being forced to ask for it. You know what I mean? So, they had just the thought of seeing somebody like a Mallory Pugh in the league earlier, or, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Olivia with the Portland Thorns. I mean, for a 13-year-old to basically say, okay, I'm going pro, great, she knows what she wants, but by the same token, okay, there's no model for her and her growth. And so it'll be interesting to see where that kind of takes them as well. So you have this, and you have even the English Premier League. I mean, what is it? Visa pumped in a ton of money. Barclays pumps in a ton of money, and now it's basically this feasible thing. And I think part of that too is probably with Neville coaching them, it gives a little bit more of a validation to the fact that, look, the women's game, they're doing well. So obviously, again, they're going to have more support in that area. But it just seems that, the U.S. is no longer, it's not the only place to play anymore. I mean, even Australia, their W League, during that time where we're, our league's on break, everybody goes down there to play. So, that side of it is a struggle for me, because there's so many other resources that are available, and it's you have to hit U.S. Soccer over the head with something in order to get them to realize it. It kind of feels like sometimes, or it's it's kind of it's a little bit to me like it is with Carolina Soccer, because I always laugh, because you were damned if we do, damned if we don't, right? So if we don't win a national title with the cheapest budget of any of the schools, then it's, oh, something's wrong. But when we do, it's well, why do you need more money? Your budget's this, and you still win. So it's kind of like that catch-22. It's okay, well, what are we going to do here?
Well, I think you're right on point in terms of what's going on, in terms of a nationwide system level, and that was really kind of where I was going with that, because when we look overseas and we compare that to what we have, it's not just the amount of money a national team player might be making, but it's also the depth, in the roster, where you've got players that are making, $10,000, I think is the minimum
Correct.
salary of the NWSL. It's laughable that you're treating that as professional soccer with a straight face from the federation. And one of the things about subsidizing Major League Soccer that you brought up, that I think a lot of people either don't know or they've forgotten, is that in 2002 Major League Soccer was about to shut down. The whole thing was about to go down, and Chuck Blazer, who got caught up in all of the FIFA scandals, got involved with helping construct basically Soccer United marketing for Major League Soccer, and in that second entity, and in putting it with U.S. Soccer in terms of a non-compete or no bid contract, and allowing Soccer United Marketing to basically get the U.S. men's and women's national team rights, media rights, and so forth, and also eventually the Mexican national team rights, 40% of that when they play in the U.S. Which, if you look back to, I think it's about 2006. Anytime Mexico plays a friendly, not a competitive match, those are going to be played on home soil or wherever the tournament is. But whenever they're playing friendly matches, most of their matches are now played in the U.S., and it's part of this Soccer United marketing contract, and 40% of that revenue is going into Soccer United marketing. All of that money is where Major League Soccer makes most of their money. It's not actually off of MLS. It's off of these contracts with these national teams and these events. And the U.S. women's national team is part of that bundle. So that money is going to the Major League Soccer owner-operators, not to the NWSL owner-operators. And so that all of that revenue, even though the TV contract that U.S. Soccer and MLS share that are bundled in one TV deal is like $90 million a year, and that's a joke compared to the rest of the world. Even in that, there's like 40-ish million that is going right back out the door to MLS that's not part of the U.S. Revenue. It's lost. It's uncaptured revenue, and that means that's money in the U.S. women's national team and the NWSL side of the ledger that is not available. To be operated on. So, when we look at that from a resourcing standpoint, we've got to get better. We also need to get more. More than 9 teams. We've got to. When we look at, and I sat in a about a year and a half ago, I sat in a presentation from the NWSL, and they were kind of going over like where they are, where they've come from, what they're looking to do. And I left that presentation going, oh my gosh, this is MLS in 1996. Like, they have literally pulled out the same playbook from 1996, starting MLS. Why didn't we learn? Why didn't we go, hey, 2002 was coming, and we almost failed? Why didn't we learn that lesson so that we didn't have contraction in Boston with the Breakers? Why did we not figure out other opportunities, ways to get this league more viable, cut down some of the travel costs, etc.? Because that's where I think we've got to get to in order to have the women's game thrive domestically. How do you see that?
I think I would say I'm a soccer purist, but I'm also a little bit, for me, the fact that the Boston team went away, I think we got to get that back as like a ode to Tony. Just with the amount of work that his family put in for that whole thing. I definitely think Boston needs to be back in. I think Dallas needs to have a team. You've got Houston right there. I'd like to see them expand, because ultimately, the league has been a proven ground for us to get other people that maybe are late bloomers for our national team. But again, it's inspiring the youth to play as well. So, if you see it, you can be it. And right now there's not a lot of opportunities for other people to see, it was, going into a bar and say, excuse me, can you put on Lifetime? It really doesn't go over well, to watch the games, last year when they had that contract, but at the same time, it's like, you're taught to be grateful for the fact you had that contract. So, or a way to watch them play. And I just find it interesting that there's not a entity that would say, hey, we'll take care of the ability to watch it on TV so people can see it. Like at the game in against Chile, it was nice because Luna's sitting there, and obviously they, ponied up some money and said, hey, we'll take care of it. It's, this. But they were also handing out blue shoelaces to kind of, again, make point of the fact that the pay gap and stuff of that nature. So I thought that was super cool. And, and I can tell you right now, as soon as they announced that they were going to do that, I mean, hello, who wouldn't want to go have a Luna bar?
Absolutely, right.
If you're aware of what's going on. So, I think some places are missing the boat on that. It's just, like I said, it's just really interesting in terms of what people want to promote and what they don't want to promote. And, I mean, you've got a winning program, and, maybe it takes us not winning for a couple of years, which was kind of what, I kind of feel like that's kind of what happened with, us going those 19 years without winning a World Cup. And it was like, what the heck's going on? What's wrong with them? And it's just, okay, we've got to figure out a different way to do something. And putting people in those positions to make those type of decisions, it's a very interesting look at stuff, because you see it across the board, but at the same time, what's really interesting to me is you have, like you look at the Matildas in Australia, and the men have basically, we're going to be paid the same. We're going to be paid the same. Like you have them jumping on board with stuff, I mean, I wouldn't say our best known or our loudest mouth person promoting, but not promoting our game, just trying to be the devil's advocate all the time with Lawless. Like, why is he on a women's podcast or a women's thing? Like, he brings nothing to the game from the women's side.
I just want to,
he's bitter.
I want to interrupt you for 1 second and just say that you have just now become my favorite guest. Continue.
My whole issue with it, like I was dying because I think somebody, like he said, I would never have celebrated like that. And it was funny because somebody posted on Twitter a picture of him celebrating like a complete, utter idiot. And someone's like, can someone please let me know what the context of this goal was? And I think it was like 4-0 or whatever. And then somebody else was like, oh, it just takes so long to go through his 25 goals that he scored in his lifetime. I don't want to sit through that video reel. Like, to me, like, you can't compare the men's program to the women's program. And I almost feel like, look, you made your name solely by how you wore your hair and the fact that you were great in the air. But from a understanding, I mean, you were a horrible GM in the MLS.
Not once, not twice, but 3 times.
I don't know. Like, he did great things for the men's program at the time that they need him. But, I'd rather support Jeff Agus or somebody else of that, that time. So I just, like, my whole thing is literally, I feel like he's on that stage solely to bring angst. And everything's not joyful or whatever. I just think he's kind of a Debbie Downer in general. So.
Well, looking at excellence and, reaching for greatness, you spent your college career at the University of North Carolina playing for Anson Dorrance and winning 4 national championships. What was it about that culture there at North Carolina that created an environment for greatness and excellence that resulted in winning 4 championships?
It's funny looking back on it now. I was a total complete idiot. I didn't take it for what it was worth during that time frame. I was that. I admit it, and I'm sure Anson laughs every time I get to admit it. But I appreciate him letting me fail on my own. But it's that competitiveness. Like, what drove me to go to Carolina was the fact that and it's the same quality I look in for kids that I recruit here at UWSP is I want kids who hate to lose more than they love to win. Like, it's a sustainable mental drive, where, like, it's not the winning part that makes me get going and do stuff. It's that not wanting to lose, and you're not going to beat me, and you're not going to, and I'm going to get better because you're forcing me to get better. And every single day you're in that environment. I mean, like I joke now with my kids, and they were making fun of me when we were in at the women's national team game on the 16th. They were like, "Who do you not know? Who do you like?" We're in France, and like all these people are coming up and giving me a hug or whatever. And I was like, "This is my world. This is what I'm used to." And I said, every single day I got to go up against Mia and Christine Lilly. Like, are you kidding me? Like, who that we played against was going to give me that 1-2 punch? Like, the closest we got to it during my playing time was when we played Shannon McMillan and Tiffany Milbred at Portland, But, like, I mean, they're great players, but they're not Christine and Mia.
Right.
It's like I get them, and then you throw in a Rita Tower or a Debbie Keller or, like I'm going to be prepared for whoever you play against me, like that's a pretty sweet way to look at things, And so it's like my practice was harder than a lot of games that we played at that time. Now it's kind of evened out and stuff, but like, how can you not get better in that environment if you totally take advantage of that environment? And I can honestly say I didn't. Now I appreciate it a lot more than I did as a student athlete there. But, the way Anson has it all set up is it's about intellectual growth. It's about mentality growth. It's about your game growth. I came in and I could put a ball where I wanted to, which helped in terms of, giving a better ball to Mia and Lil and Fisher, or Ange, like that group. So it was like, obviously they made me look great, but at the same time, it was like, can you compete with them? Can you get better? Can you do the things you needed to do to get to that next level? And those guys helped me get there. So it was, you're right within that group that if somebody wasn't busting the butt, that you could totally call them out on it, which a lot of women struggle with, because you're like, oh, I still want them to like me. I still, but ultimately, we can go at each other for an hour and a half playing wise, but as soon as we step across the line, it's totally different. And it's a tough place to get, but he has made it where that's the expectation. And if you're a player looking to become greater than what you are, I mean, my God, from an academic setting, Carolina, it's just a gorgeous place. Now, the other part that I was a huge Carolina basketball fan, like probably more so than anything else. And, I got to watch some amazing teams play. I was a huge music has always been a big passion of mine. And I saw Dave Matthews in a venue that was only 30 people. I saw, so it was like that whole music genre that came out of there during that period of time with Dave Matthews and Five for Fighting and, that whole, like, we saw them in the smallest venues you possibly could see. And it's just amazing. Like, I love that aspect of it.
When you took this job with UWSP, what were some of the things that you were looking to do in terms of your own environment, your own culture that you were going to try to create there with UWSP in terms of the program, players, your staff, etc.?
Well, it's kind of like catch-22. So when I my last coaching job in college before that was at Duquesne. And, young and dumb come to mind with that process. I joke and say anybody who played for me when I was there, like it's almost like I want to just apologize half the time, but it was like I was so close to them in age. I was, trying to keep it. But the reality of it is nowadays you have to become, you've got to figure out what makes each player tick. You got to figure out and have a relationship with those players to get them to buy into what you're trying to do, but also to let them know that you care more about them as a person as opposed to just a player. And that was something when I was looking at coming up here. One of the people I spoke to was Linda Hamilton, because she had just gone from D1 down to D3. And she's like, you're going to absolutely love it. The kids will run through a wall for you. They don't have to be there. You're not going to have those awkward money conversations that you can't really say anything about, when they come in and say, well, you gave so-and-so more money. And you're like, I did? Oh, I didn't give them any, but you can't necessarily say that. So that conversation is totally out of there. And so UWSP used to be a phenomenal program. Sheila Niche did a great job. And it was kind of like the Carolina of Division III. They won the conference tournament, 15 out of 16 times. They did all this other stuff. And so it was really a phenomenal program. And then it took drastic steps within 3 years to basically kind of change that. They went from making every single conference tournament, to not making anything. They went from making being top 15 to not even making this tournament. So, top 15 nationally to, I think we've gotten the team back on track, and we've done that from the girls developing that culture. I say consistently we facilitate it, but it's their culture that they have kind of made. And so we talk about being a family. They come over to our house quite a bit during the season for meals, and not just our house, but like our other assistants, and basically that we take turns hosting them during preseason type of a deal. But then also getting to know each other. Why are we playing? What are we doing? How do we want this to kind of fit together, and talking about accountability and holding each other accountable from even just the grade standpoint. And so we've pretty much tried to just revamp that culture and give them something to kind of play for and play for each other. And, we had the highest GPA of any of the athletic teams on campus at a 3.57 with 21 kids. So that's kind of impressive. And like I said, we look for kids who are very self-motivated. We've passed on some kids that could have helped us on the field, sure, but at the same time, I don't know very many people would have played for them, just because of the ego or attitude that they kind of had. And so we've really kind of gone in and looked at the core of the value system that these players have, and whether they mesh, well with us in terms of what we're looking to do. I tell our girls a ton that it's not about me. Like, I've been there, done that. We can get you where you want to go, but it's up to you guys to epitomize what our team's about, and how you guys can get there. And I can tell you that probably one of the biggest things we did was let them set their culture, but also recruit characters. I hate saying that word, but it's like we had a kid who just would come to practice and sing Disney songs all the time. So how can you not be in a great mood? But there was a flair to her game that, when push comes to shove, that's going to come up and show its face, as opposed to somebody who has no, isn't outgoing and whatever, and just kind of goes to the backside, and it becomes too much for them. So we looked for people like that who would say, hop on, let's go. And I think it's been a great, a great time. I mean, we went from finishing last in the conference, and last year in our conference, we didn't lose a game. We were right on the outskirts of making the NCAA tournament. We lost 2 games last year. So, I'm hoping for more this year, but at the same time, it's about the team that we have. It's about doing what we're asking them to do. And we've got some great kids coming in, and we have some great kids coming back. So it's going to be a fight for those positions. And, we tell the girls when we get here that it's my job to recruit over you, and I'm going to do that. But it's also my job, and it's the fun part of my job, to get you ready to compete with those kids that are coming in. So the spring season for me, even though it's 15 days, basically, like, we're pushing you to get better. And they're the type of players that continue that after they leave here for the summer. So it's kind of nice. I don't have to, check in on them or worry about them or any of that kind of stuff. And I think with taking them to Europe, I think they have a whole new perspective on what it is that they want to do.
When we look at the landscape of college soccer, what would you what changes would you make to make it better?
It's interesting. Like, I like to think of myself as a purist. Um, I'm like, whether we play on grass or turf seems to be a big thing with a lot of people. But to me, if, playing up in the north and you never know what type of weather you're getting, if you have a turf surface, it's both teams are playing on it. It's better for the student athlete if I'd rather play on that than a soggy, sloppy field that somebody could get hurt on. You know, um, I know from the Division One level, I know a lot of coaches don't like the fact that you can sub through on your whole roster. Um, I don't know if they're just sick of the way Carolina plays and he can bring so many people on all the time. So he can keep that high pressure on the team, but like other people are starting to do it. So you have a lot of that where, at the D3 level, it's about playing players. So, you have that mix of it. Um, also with missing of school, that kind of stuff. I think there's certain things that need to be fixed in terms of, why can't the referees keep the time on the field? Why can't the clock go up? um, and keep it going up. Um, but I think a lot of times it's um, people trying to associate it with other sports, and well, this is what they do with this. Why can't you do the same thing? I think there's some of that. Um, but like overall, I think it's a good model for what it was there to do. Obviously Division One, you're trying to make kids or players, the next level, and also give them an education. And I think that becomes a bigger thing. I would like to see, I like the idea of what the Division One men's program's doing with making it a year-round sport. I think it's a heck of a lot better for the student athlete from an injury standpoint. Um, I think you're going to alleviate the need for, um, you probably won't have as many red shirt type kids because if you get injured in the spring, unless it's an ACL or something major on that end, but they're gonna be able to play again and if they get hurt in the fall, they can play again in the spring. It also gives you more time to practice with them. And maybe my hope would be that the game gets better, like the product you're putting on the field gets better, because they're not as tired, they're not as run down, they're not worn out per se. But I think again, until there's that some type of model, the other part is, will it come back to backfire if it work? If it doesn't work, is it going to get what you want out of it? And so you're kind of playing with fire in terms of, if it passes and you don't like it, the probability of you going back to how it was is slim to none. So I think a lot of times, it's that be careful what you wish for. And here you go. It's like, sometimes with that recruiting calendar now that we have at the Division One level, it's like, well, yeah, I want to spend time with my family. Well, now that's great. But like now you're on the road just as much, just in different time slots. So, because it's still keeping up with the Joneses. Well, they're going there. I got to be seen too, and so it's, to me, it'd be more of just figuring out, there's certain tournaments we go to and certain tournaments we don't go to. Like it has some to do with money, but it's more like, well, we don't really recruit that type of kid, or, oh, that's great, so and so's going there, but we're not going there. And it's just taking that presence of knowing what you did recruiting wise, that you've set yourself up to be successful in the type of student athletes that you're recruiting. And it helps when the players you have are talking well about your program. So, you hope you're doing the right thing, because I think it all kind of carries on to, what you're doing. Like, I'm not going to sell a kid on my school if we don't have a very good program for what it is they're doing. Like, I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror and looking at my kids, and, I'd hope somebody would have the decency to do that as well. So, it it's like that whole process, you're still going to have people in the business that are still in it for themselves as opposed to the players that they're working with. And I always say it's my job to get those players to be better than what they were when they came in and hopefully not have to move back in with mom and dad afterwards and find a job.
So I want to close you with one question, and it's something I love to do with guests at the very end, which is I'm going to make you supreme ruler of American soccer for a day. You are the queen of American soccer. There is no king to answer to. You are in charge. You are Queen Elizabeth of American soccer. We are all under your dominion. What would you do with your one day in charge of American soccer?
Easiest would be I would have to make sure my crown's sparkly. But on the side of things, I would make sure to fund, the women's program a lot better than what it's being funded at, and just all encompassing from, stepping up things for a league and stepping up pay, but and I think the other part is, our women's program is so marketable, and people get behind stories that a lot of the women have, and you don't necessarily see that on the guy side. And so I think that fixing and going after that marketing side and would be something that I would look at. The other thing I would like to look at is I'm a huge fan of relegation, and I think it has to be there, because if you're not willing to fix things, you look at New England on the men's side, you look at Sky Blue on the women's side. Like, I would like to see relegation, demotion, promotion. Like, I would like to see that, because there's something there to it. I think back to my, like I said, I like sports in general, but think about how long the Clippers were freaking horrible because that guy wouldn't put any money into it. And then all of a sudden they go off and, get somebody of merit in there. And now they're not the Clippers of old, type of a deal. So it's like, right. Can we find ways to get that relegation? Because, we're losing out on some great investors because they're like, what do you mean there's no relegation? And I think that again, it's the one issue I have with American football is, crap, the Browns were horrible forever. Okay, but if there was some ode to going down or up, all right, now are they going to figure out the right people to put in the right situations? And I think that becomes a big thing for us in general. Even just within U.S. soccer, I would like to see, the accountability aspect of things. I think that's a big thing. Like, too often we settle, and I don't think we're the U.S. We don't have to settle.
Absolutely, and I love the correlation that you've made, and you can tell that it is part of your ethos. In that every time you talk about greatness and excellence, you keep going back to accountability. And that truly is a big part of what promotion and relegation and open systems are about, is you're accountable to your actions and your decisions, your choices, your investments or lack thereof. And there is an inherent pressure for you to perform. No one's having to tell you, hey, make sure you have a good team on the field, because that if you don't have a good team on the field, you're going down. And it naturally gets people to to compete, to invest, to put resources in, and ultimately I think that the entire system, and that's really I think how it should be looked at, is the entire system gets better because of it. Sure, Do you have an
Mm-hmm.
occasional team or two that doesn't get it right and they struggle and they go down? Yes. And, if you look in England, for example, I don't know if you watched the Sunderland Till I Die
Oh my gosh,
series.
I absolutely love that,
It
and
was
like I felt
fantastic.
so bad for them.
Me too. But at the same time,
I'm not against
they're
Sunderland fan,
living
but
they're living the accountability of their choices,
right.
and
Mm-hmm.
so it's part of it. It doesn't mean it's the end of the day for Sunderland. It just means that they're going to have to work their way back. And other teams have
Right.
been working and have taken their opportunities. And I look at a club like Bournemouth, who came to the Premier League and were one of the first clubs that I can remember in England that were very, very smart about how they approached their first year. They were
Mm-hmm.
they were short on seating, and the Premier League has a requirement of 12,500 seats by the end of your second year in the league. So they had a
Mm-hmm.
plan to expand their stadium. They were at like 11.5, 12, so they weren't far off. But
Right.
instead of putting that money into the stadium in year one, their manager, Eddie Howe, decided to put that money into his roster. And the other reason why he didn't want to put it into the stadium in year one is that because of the rules of the Premier League, where 10% of the tickets have to be allocated to away fans, that would
Right.
have put away supporters behind one of their goals. And the way their stadium was set up at the time, they could leave the away fans tucked up in a corner. And
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to keep that advantage, a home field advantage, and
Mm-hmm.
put that money in the players. Well, it's paid off. They haven't gotten relegated, and they finished their stadium in year two, have remained mid-table, which when you're coming into the Premier League and you haven't been there, and to get there and to stay, I think
Right.
is an amazing testament to their work and their decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
I think
Oh, totally.
you're spot on with your answers there, and we really do appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your ideas. And again, your Alexi Lawless moment is going to go down in the record book as one of our favorite segments of all time. So
Well, like I said, it's nothing against him, but like, it's pretty funny to me. Like, and I hate saying this because I was totally that player at Carolina, which again, grateful that Jensen didn't kick me to the curb. Um, but I was totally a Debbie Downer. I sucked the life out of people. Now, in my older years, now I look back and I don't want to have any association with anybody who's like that. And so if I can mute the TV when he talks, that's what I'm going to do because he's just, like I said, a fair weather fan. And you know, like it's one of those things where it's just like you talk out of both sides. I don't, as a fan, I'd rather you just keep your point or say, you know what, I was wrong about this or whatever in that regard. I think, like I said, at least for me, Taylor Twellman, at least his "What are we doing?"
right.
He's stuck by his guns. Like I value that. That's your opinion. Don't waffle back and forth so you can be on this, telecast or this telecast. Make a statement and then either stick by it or not, or say, "Look, I'm sorry," but he's perfect in his mind.
Well, I think your comments today have been perfect in my mind. So we really do appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your thoughts about the women's game, the college game. I mean, we've gone through a whole host of subjects, but you've been
Mm-hmm.
great, and we really do appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I love what you're doing, and I'm excited to listen to Anthony talk tomorrow. So keep up the
Absolutely.
good work.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on.
All right, have a good one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. That was Dawn Crow. She is the head coach of UWSP. That is University of Wisconsin Stevens Point. And I love her candor and her willingness to take a hard look at issues and be reflective, think about what we can do to get better, and challenge our current level and say, is this as good as we can be? Can we get better? And in looking at ways to do that. So I really appreciate her spending some time with us and coming on and sharing her thoughts, including on Alexi. I thought that was pretty funny to hear that candor from her. Our sponsor this half hour is Charity Water. Charity Water provides clean drinking water to people all over the world. They are changing lives one village at a time, and I hope that you take some time to check them out at charitywater.org. We will be right back after this.
No one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Or you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
Thanks for tuning in this Thursday, June the 20th. Again, the U.S. Women's National Team play a little bit later today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time against Sweden, and the big match at noon Eastern is the Netherlands and Canada. Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to Dawn Crow for coming on the show. I really appreciate her spending some time with us talking about the game, and had some really good insights and really enjoyed that conversation. As always, you can watch the show live at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on danielworkman.com. We'll see everybody again tomorrow.